Did you fill this out by yourself?
Yeah.
Then you can read and write?
Yeah.
Can you speak English?
Yeah.
Can I hear some of it?
What do you want me to say?
That's enough.
From Jerry Seinfeld's humiliating firing to a bizarre episode where Benson plays Trivial Pursuit with Death himself, the sitcom Benson has more strange stories than you'd expect from a show about a butler-turned-politician. This beloved ABC series wasn't just Robert Guillaume's Emmy-winning vehicle. It was a breeding ground for future Star Trek legends, featured real-life siblings playing cousins, and ended with one of television's most frustrating cliffhangers. Here are 15 weird facts you didn't know about Benson. Fact 1. Jerry Seinfeld was fired without warning.
Frankie! Don't bother to get up. I can throw myself out.
Hi, Frankie.
You want to hear a joke?
Not if it's one of yours.
Long before Jerry Seinfeld became one of the most successful comedians in television history, he was just a struggling stand-up comic looking for his first big break in acting. In 1980, he landed what seemed like a promising recurring role on the hit sitcom Benson, playing a character named Frankie, who worked as a mail courier at the governor's mansion. The character was written as an aspiring comedian who constantly tried to pitch terrible jokes to the governor and staff, much to everyone's annoyance. Frankie would show up with his mail pouch and immediately launch into awful comedy routines that nobody wanted to hear, and Benson would regularly tell him to leave. The character appeared in 3 episodes during the show's second season, including one titled Fool's Gold, which marked Seinfeld's very first television appearance in an acting role. What happened next became one of the most humiliating moments of Seinfeld's early career and a story he would tell for decades afterward. The producers decided they didn't want to continue with the character due to what they called creative differences, but instead of calling Seinfeld to let him know he was being let go, they simply didn't tell him anything at all. Seinfeld showed up to the next table, Red expecting to perform his scenes like usual, only to discover when he arrived that there was no script waiting for him. He looked around confused while the rest of the cast had their scripts in hand, and that's when he realized he had been fired without anyone bothering to give him a phone call or any notice whatsoever. The experience was devastating for the young comedian who was already struggling to make it in Hollywood. Years later, after Seinfeld became a massive hit and made him one of the most famous people in entertainment, he reflected on that painful experience and admitted that being fired from Benson in such a humiliating way actually helped fuel his determination to create his own show where he would have creative control. The anger and frustration from that rejection became part of the drive that led him to develop Seinfeld with Larry David. Fact 2. 3 different endings were filmed.
Well, if I'm adopted, how come I look just like Pop?
That's no proof. He could have been adopted, too.
When Benson came to an end in 1986, the show went out with one of the most unusual and frustrating cliffhangers in television history. And the story behind why it happened is even stranger than the ending itself. The final episode of the series showed Benson Dubois running for governor against his former employer, Governor Eugene Gatling, in what should have been the ultimate culmination of Benson's journey from butler to political powerhouse. The 2 men who had worked together for 7 seasons were now political rivals competing for the state's highest office, and viewers were anxious to see who would win. But when the episode aired, it ended on a freeze frame of Benson and Gatling watching the election results together on television, just as the news broadcaster was beginning to announce the winner. The screen froze, the credits rolled, and audiences never found out who won the election. What makes this even more bizarre is that the producers actually filmed 3 completely different endings to the episode. According to director Gary Brown, who helmed the finale along with 20 other episodes of Benson, one version showed Benson winning the election, another showed Gatling winning, and a 3rd version was also filmed, though the specifics of that ending remain unclear. The plan, as explained by executive producer Bob Fraser in 2007, was for the network to decide over the summer break which ending would be used when the show returned for another season. The producers were essentially hedging their bets, creating multiple scenarios so they could choose the best direction for the show's future based on how they wanted the next season to unfold. However, ABC had other plans entirely. The network canceled Benson after the cliffhanger episode had already aired, which means the decision about which ending to use was never made. Fraser later revealed that if the show had been renewed, the intended storyline was for Gatling to win the election and for Benson to move on to become a United States Senator, continuing his upward political trajectory. Instead, the series ended with one of television's most unresolved cliffhangers, leaving fans to wonder forever who actually won that governor's race. Fact 3. Robert Guillaume preferred his soap version.
Hi.
I'm hiding.
I see.
There's a strange woman out there. She's after me.
Tall blonde.
When Robert Guillaume brought the character of Benson Dubois to his own spin-off series in 1979, audiences might have assumed the actor was thrilled to finally be the star of his own show, but the truth was more complicated than that. Guillaume actually admitted in multiple interviews over the years that he preferred playing Benson on the original series Soap more than he enjoyed playing the character on Benson, which might seem surprising considering the spin-off ran for 7 successful seasons and earned him an Emmy for Outstanding Lead Actor in a Comedy Series. The reason for this preference had everything to do with how the character had to be fundamentally changed when he became a leading man instead of a supporting player. On Soap, Benson was allowed to be grouchier, more sarcastic, and had what Guillaume described as an off-color sense of humor that made the character feel more three-dimensional and edgier. He was more outspoken and got into conflicts with the other characters more frequently, which gave Guillaume the chance to play someone with real bite and attitude. But when producer Susan Harris created the spin-off and made Benson the main character, she made a conscious decision to soften the character significantly because she was trying to make him palatable for mass audiences who would be watching him as the central figure every week, rather than as a scene-stealing supporting character. The new version of Benson was more affable, more low-key, and fought with the other characters much less than he had on Soap, which took away some of the qualities that Guillaume found most interesting to play as an actor. This transformation wasn't just about tone, but about the realities of television in the late 1970s and early 1980s, when networks were cautious about how they presented African American lead characters and wanted to ensure they would appeal to the broadest possible audience. Guillaume understood the business reasons behind the change, but he still missed the sharper, more complex version of Benson that he had created on the parent series. Fact 4. Benson played Trivial Pursuit with death.
Hey, your card says you're in the travel business. What sort of trips do you arrange?
Oh, I specialize in one-way journeys.
One way. Well, how do they get back?
If you think Benson was just a typical sitcom about politics and household management, you'd be wrong, because the show occasionally took some truly bizarre creative turns that caught viewers completely off guard. One of the strangest episodes in the entire 7-season run featured Benson literally sitting down to play a game of Trivial Pursuit with the Grim Reaper himself, and the stakes couldn't have been higher since the lives of a busload of children hung in the balance. The episode began with a group of school children caught in a dangerous storm, and somehow this life-or-death situation led to Benson facing off against death in what has to be one of the most surreal moments in sitcom history. The Grim Reaper appeared as a character who went by the name G. Reaper, and he challenged Benson to the board game to determine the fate of the trapped children, turning what should have been a tense, dramatic situation into something bizarrely comedic. What made the scene even more absurd was that Benson quickly realized death wasn't playing fair, because every single question that the Grim Reaper received somehow related to death in one way or another, which gave him an obvious and unfair advantage in the game. Benson repeatedly called him out for cheating, pointing out that the questions were rigged in Death's favor, but the game continued anyway as the tension built. The ultimate twist came when Death, despite his supernatural powers and stacked deck of death-related trivia, actually lost the game because he missed a question about Charles Bronson's famous film Death Wish, which is particularly ironic considering the movie's title, and subject matter should have been right in Death's wheelhouse. The fact that the personification of death couldn't answer a question about a movie literally called Death Wish added an extra layer of comedy to an already ridiculous premise, and it showed just how willing the writers of Benson were to experiment with surreal storytelling that went far beyond the typical boundaries of a political sitcom. Fact 5. 2 Star Trek legends work together.
Yeah, so are we. Benson, you should really make a list of all the things that need to get done.
That's a good idea, Pete.
Thank you, Peter.
Before they ever set foot on starships in the Delta Quadrant or space station Deep Space Nine, 2 future Star Trek icons were working side by side in a governor's mansion on Earth. Ethan Phillips and Renee Auberjonois spent 5 years together as co-stars on Benson, playing the bumbling press secretary Pete Downey and the pompous chief of staff Clayton Endicott III. And neither of them had any idea they'd both end up becoming beloved fixtures in the Star Trek universe. Phillips joined the cast of Benson in 1980 as Pete Downey, the governor's frequently high-strung press secretary who eventually married Denise Stevens and had a child before leaving the show in Season 5. Auberjonois came aboard in Season 2 as Clayton Runnymede Endicott III, replacing the previous chief of staff character who had simply vanished without explanation. The 2 actors developed a strong working relationship during their time on the show, with their characters often playing off each other in comedic scenes. Auberjonois even earned an Emmy nomination for Outstanding Supporting Actor in a Comedy in 1984 for his portrayal of the hypochondriac political advisor. After Benson ended in 1986, both actors continued their careers in various projects, but it was their later work in Star Trek that would define them for an entirely new generation of fans. Phillips landed the role of Neelix, the enthusiastic Talaxian chef and morale officer on Star Trek Voyager, appearing in 168 episodes from 1995 to 2001. Auberjonois became the shape-shifting Constable Odo on Star Trek Deep Space Nine, playing the stern security chief for all 7 seasons from 1993 to 1999. Interestingly, Phillips had actually appeared in Star Trek The Next Generation in 1990, playing a Ferengi doctor in a single episode, which began his journey into the franchise several years before Voyager. The 2 Benson alumni became so associated with their Star Trek roles that they regularly appeared together at Star Trek conventions, where fans would occasionally ask them about their earlier work together on the sitcom that launched their friendship. Fact 6. Guillaume was the first black actor to win Lead Comedy Emmy.
Yeah, it's an old blacksmith shop. They turned it into a restaurant. It's got hand-carved beams, stone floors, one of the best wine cellars in the state, and the shrimp are huge.
When Robert Guillaume won the Emmy for Outstanding Lead Actor in a Comedy Series in 1985, he made history as the first African-American to win in that category. And his acceptance speech showed he had a sense of humor about the whole thing. Guillaume had been nominated for the award multiple times before finally taking home the trophy for his portrayal of Benson Dubois, the sharp-tongued butler who worked his way up to lieutenant governor over the course of the show's 7 seasons. What made this win particularly significant was that it broke a barrier that had stood since the Emmy Awards began recognizing television performances, and Guillaume was well aware of what his victory meant for black actors in Hollywood. During his acceptance speech, Guillaume delivered a line that got plenty of laughs from the audience when he quipped that he'd like to thank Bill Cosby for not being here. This was a playful nod to the fact that Cosby, who was starring in The Cosby Show at the time and was one of the biggest sitcom stars in America, had taken himself out of Emmy consideration that year. Without Cosby in the running, Guillaume's path to victory was certainly easier, and he acknowledged this reality with good-natured humor rather than false modesty. The joke perfectly captured Guillaume's personality, both on screen and off, showing that he could be gracious about his achievement while still keeping things light and self-aware. Guillaume's win was actually his second Emmy for playing Benson, as he had previously won Outstanding Supporting Actor in a comedy series in 1979 for playing the same character on the parent show Soap before the spin-off began. This made him the first black actor to win in both the supporting and lead comedy categories, a double achievement that wouldn't be matched by another black actor for decades. Guillaume earned a total of 6 Emmy nominations for playing Benson across both shows, and his 1985 win remains a landmark moment in television history, opening doors for future generations of black actors in leading comedic roles. Fact 7. Real sisters played cousins on the show.
Hey, Laura, too bad you didn't come to watch softball practice. Mary Jane Donovan took a line drive right in her new nose.
In a 1985 episode titled Katie's Cousin, the show featured a unique bit of casting that blurred the lines between fiction and reality when Missy Gold's real-life older sister, Tracy Gold, appeared on the show. Tracy, who was already gaining fame for her role as Carol Seaver on the hit sitcom Growing Pains, played Katie Gatling's visiting cousin in the episode, creating a fun family reunion both on screen and behind the scenes. The episode's plot revolved around Tracy's character talking Katie into lying to her father, Governor Gatling, about where they were going for the evening, and the two girls end up getting caught at a bar together, leading to the typical sitcom consequences and life lessons that followed. What makes this episode even more interesting is a hidden detail that most viewers would have missed during the original broadcast. The bar where the two teenage girls get caught sneaking in was called Brandy's, and this wasn't just a random name chosen by the writers. Brandy was actually the name of Missy and Tracy's real-life younger sister, Brandy Gold, who was building her own television career at the time, with a recurring role as Alexis on the medical drama St. Elsewhere. This clever Easter egg turned the episode into a triple Gold family tribute, even though Brandy herself didn't appear in the episode. The Gold family was something of a television dynasty during the 1980s, with multiple sisters working as actresses across different popular shows. In addition to Missy on Benson, Tracy on Growing Pains, and Brandy on St. Elsewhere, the family also included another sister named Jessie, who had various guest spots on television shows, though she never achieved the same level of fame as her siblings. Only the youngest sister, Cassie, chose not to pursue acting at all. The sisters were originally named Melissa and Tracy Goldstein before shortening their professional surname to Gold, and they all grew up working in the entertainment industry together, making Tracy's guest appearance on Missy's show a natural and memorable family collaboration that added an extra layer of warmth to an already family-friendly sitcom. Fact 8. Caroline McWilliams was married to Michael Keaton.
Well, there's no point in going to pieces in front of Katie. She's gonna have a hard enough time as it is. So I decided to put on my happy face.
Thank you, Marcy.
While Caroline McWilliams played the sensible and often unlucky-in-love secretary Marcy Hill on Benson, her real-life romantic story had its own unexpected twists that most viewers never knew about. McWilliams was married to actor Michael Keaton, who would go on to become one of Hollywood's biggest stars as Batman from 1982 until 1990, right in the middle of her time on the show and beyond. The couple met while both were working actors trying to make it in Hollywood, and they married in 1982, which was during McWilliams' run on Benson. The following year, in 1983, they welcomed their son, Sean Douglas, and McWilliams balanced her role on the sitcom with being a new mother. Despite their shared understanding of the entertainment industry and the demands of acting careers, the marriage faced challenges, and Keaton filed for divorce in 1990 after nearly 8 years together. What makes this connection even more interesting is how their son Sean turned the creative DNA he inherited from both parents into something completely different from acting. Sean Douglas went on to become an incredibly successful songwriter and music producer, carving out his own impressive career in the entertainment world. He co-wrote Thomas Rhett's massive country hit, Die a Happy Man, which won the CMA Award for Single of the Year and became one of the biggest country songs of the decade. He also worked with pop superstar Lizzo and won a Grammy Award for his contributions to her album "'Cause I Love You," along with writing for other major artists like Demi Lovato, Madonna, and Jessie J. Even after their divorce, McWilliams and Keaton reportedly remained on friendly terms, staying connected through their shared love for their son. When McWilliams passed away in 2010 from complications related to multiple myeloma, Keaton spoke about how the loss affected him more deeply than he expected, noting that they had maintained a close friendship over the years. In a 2015 Golden Globes acceptance speech that became one of the most touching moments of the ceremony, Keaton emotionally praised Sean, calling him his best friend and crediting McWilliams for raising such an amazing person. Fact 9. Denise was written out for NASA.
Pete, he's a selfish, inconsiderate slob.
Yeah, well, Pete is a little immature.
That's not a very nice thing to say.
When Dee Dee Kahn's character Denise Stevens Downey and her husband Pete left Benson during the show's 6th season, the writers gave them one of the most unexpectedly specific exit explanations in sitcom history. According to the storyline, Denise had been offered a job with NASA, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, and the couple needed to relocate so she could pursue this surprising new career opportunity. For a character who had spent several seasons working as the governor's sweet-natured and somewhat ditzy secretary, this sudden leap to America's space agency seemed to come completely out of left field. What made this departure even stranger was that the show never bothered to explain how or why Denise would have qualified for a position at NASA in the first place. There was no build-up showing her developing an interest in aerospace engineering, no storylines about her taking night classes in science or technology, and no hints that she possessed any specialized skills that would make her an attractive candidate for the space program. Denise had simply been portrayed as a cheerful, naive secretary who happened to fall in love with and marry Pete Downey, the governor's high-strung press secretary. The writers apparently decided that sending the couple off to work for NASA sounded more interesting than having them move away for a more conventional reason, even if it made absolutely no sense for the character. Both Dee Dee Kahn and Ethan Phillips, who played Pete, left the series after season 5, though they made guest appearances in season 6 to explain their departure. The NASA explanation was mentioned briefly, and then the show moved on, never addressing the obvious questions about how a governor's secretary with no apparent scientific background would end up working at one of the most prestigious research organizations in the country. It remains one of the oddest character exits in the show's 7-season run, a random detail that fans still find puzzling decades later. Fact 10. The character name changed mid-series.
All right, maybe this is a bit much, but surely you'll appear with me when I address the NAACP chapter.
If you were watching Benson from the very beginning, you might have noticed something incredibly strange happening between Season 1 and Season 2. The governor's chief of staff essentially became a completely different person overnight, with absolutely no explanation. In the pilot episode, the character was named John Taylor and was played by actor David Hedison, who's probably best known for playing Felix Leiter in James Bond films. When the show was picked up for a full first season, the role was recast with Louis J. Stadlin taking over as the same character, John Taylor, for the remaining episodes of Season 1. But here's where things get truly bizarre. When Season 2 rolled around in 1980, John Taylor had simply vanished into thin air, and in his place was an entirely new character named Clayton Runnymede Endicott III, played by René Auberjonois. The show never acknowledged this change, never explained where John Taylor went, and never mentioned him again for the remaining 6 seasons. Clayton Endicott wasn't presented as a replacement or a new hire. He was just suddenly there, as if he'd always been part of the governor's staff. This is what television fans call Chuck Cunningham syndrome, named after a character from Happy Days who disappeared without explanation, and it's one of the most glaring examples of the phenomenon in sitcom history. What makes this particularly unusual is that Clayton Endicott became one of the most important and beloved characters on the entire show, earning Renee Auberjonois an Emmy nomination and serving as Benson's primary foil for the next 6 years. The character's pompous, hypochondriac personality and his contentious yet ultimately respectful relationship with Benson became central to the show's dynamic. It's almost impossible to imagine Benson without Clayton Endicott, yet he literally replaced another character who simply ceased to exist. The transition was so abrupt and unexplained that it remains one of the strangest creative decisions in the show's history, leaving longtime viewers to wonder what exactly happened to poor John Taylor. Fact 11. Grease's Frenchie joined the cast.
Oh, Benson, there's a note here from Professor Petrie. He wants to know if you want a copy of your family crest.
Family crest?
Yes, apparently you're descended from royalty.
When Didi Conn joined the cast of Benson in 1981, audiences immediately recognized her as Frenchie from the blockbuster musical Grease, which had become a cultural phenomenon just 3 years earlier. Conn took on the role of Denise Stevens, a sweet-natured and cheerfully naive secretary who replaced the departing Marcy Hill character starting in Season 3, Episode 3. Her character brought a completely different energy to the governor's mansion, playing the optimistic counterpart to the more cynical and sarcastic personalities that dominated the show. What made Conn's casting particularly interesting was the timing, as she was riding high on the success of Grease, where she had played the lovable beauty school dropout who dreams of becoming a hairdresser. The producers of Benson clearly saw value in bringing someone with that level of name recognition onto their show, and Conn's natural warmth and comedic timing fit perfectly with the ensemble cast. During her time on Benson, Denise Stevens became romantically involved with Pete Downey, the governor's press secretary, played by Ethan Phillips, and the two characters eventually married and had a child together in the show's 5th season. Conn remained with Benson through Season 5, making guest appearances in Season 6 before her character was written out, with the explanation that Denise had secured a job with NASA. After leaving Benson, Conn went on to find even greater success with children as Stacy Jones on the beloved series Shining Time Station, which ran from 1989 to 1995. What's truly remarkable about Didi Conn's career is that she holds a unique distinction in Grease history. She is the only actress to appear in all 3 major screen adaptations of the Grease franchise. Beyond her iconic role in the original 1978 film and its sequel Grease 2 in 1982, Conn also appeared in the 2016 television production Grease Live, where she played the diner waitress Vi. In the original film, that same character of Vi had been played by legendary actress Joan Blondell, making Conn's appearance in the remake a touching full-circle moment that connected all 3 generations of Grease productions. Fact 12. Missy Gold became a psychologist.
Dad was coming home today.
No. I'm picking him up tomorrow at the airport.
I thought it was today.
Well, you thought wrong.
When Benson wrapped up in 1986 after 7 successful seasons, 9-year-old Missy Gold made a decision that shocked Hollywood. She walked away from acting completely and never looked back. For someone who had spent her entire childhood in front of cameras, playing Governor Gatling's precocious daughter Katie for the show's entire run, this wasn't just a career break, it was a total reinvention of her life. Gold had started acting when she was only 6 years old, appearing in the miniseries Captains and the Kings in 1976. But she never really loved the profession the way some child stars do. In a 2022 interview with Page 6, she explained that she didn't go into acting as a child for some great love of it, and that she was always more of a student at heart. While her older sister Tracy, who became famous playing Carol on Growing Pains, was very much in her wheelhouse as an actress, Missy described herself as much more of an introvert who felt pulled toward academic pursuits rather than the entertainment industry. After filming her final Benson episode, Gold was actually invited to test for a soap opera role, but she turned it down without hesitation because she knew she wanted to go to college and do something beyond acting. She finished up high school, applied to colleges, and enrolled at Georgetown University, where she earned her bachelor's degree. But she didn't stop there. Gold continued her education at the California School of Professional Psychology, where she completed her Ph.D. in clinical psychology, becoming Dr. Melissa Gold. Today, Gold maintains a private practice in California, where she works as a licensed psychologist, using her years of experience and education to help patients rather than entertain audiences. Interestingly, she has said that her childhood experiences in the entertainment industry actually inform her work as a therapist, giving her unique insights into the pressures and challenges that people face when navigating public expectations and personal identity. Fact 13. Inga Swenson's famous running gag.
I want your shoes.
They'll be too small.
One of the most beloved recurring jokes throughout Benson's entire 7-season run involved the ongoing verbal sparring between Benson and the governor's German chef, Gretchen Krauss, played by actress Inga Swenson. The two characters were constantly at odds with each other, trading barbs and insults throughout nearly every episode. But the show developed a signature comedic moment that audiences came to anticipate and love. Whenever Gretchen would storm out of a room after an argument or disagreement with Benson, he would wait until she was supposedly out of earshot and then mutter one final cutting remark under his breath, thinking he'd gotten the last word. But without fail, Gretchen would shout from offstage in her thick German accent, "I hear you, ooh, ooh, ooh," stretching out the words for maximum comedic effect. This running gag became so iconic that it appeared consistently throughout the series from 1979 to 1986, becoming one of the show's most recognizable catchphrases. The brilliance of this recurring joke was in its timing and delivery. Inga Swenson's off-screen shout was perfectly calibrated to arrive just when the audience thought Benson had won their latest verbal battle, proving that Krauss always had the upper hand, no matter how clever Benson's final insult might have been. The elongated, sing-song way she would stretch out the words became her signature delivery, and fans would often laugh in anticipation before she even said the line because they knew it was coming. Despite their constant bickering and the insults they hurled at each other, the running gag also reinforced that Benson and Krauss had a deeper friendship underneath all the antagonism. The predictability of her response became a comfort to viewers, and it demonstrated that these two characters knew each other so well that Benson should have realized by then that she could always hear him. Yet he kept making those final remarks anyway, almost as if he wanted her to respond. Fact 14. Both spin-off shows ended on cliffhangers.
Well, you won't be needing my services anymore, Krauss. Have a wonderful time. All I can say is it's been tense.
In one of television's strangest coincidences, Robert Guillaume had the unfortunate distinction of starring in two different sitcoms that both ended with unresolved cliffhangers, and both shows featured the same character. The first was Soap, the groundbreaking comedy that ran on ABC from 1977 to 1981, where Guillaume first introduced audiences to Benson Dubois, the sharp-tongued butler working for the dysfunctional Tate family. When Soap was canceled after 4 seasons, viewers were left hanging with multiple storylines that never got resolved, including major plot threads involving the entire cast that simply ended mid-story when the network pulled the plug on the series. After Benson became a breakout character on Soap, ABC gave Guillaume his own spin-off show in 1979, and it ran successfully for 7 seasons until 1986. But lightning struck twice when Benson also ended on a cliffhanger that left audiences frustrated and confused. In the show's final episode, Benson had worked his way up from head of household affairs to lieutenant governor, and was now running for governor against his former boss, Governor Gatling. The two-part series finale showed the election results coming in as an extremely close race, with Benson and Gatling watching the returns together on television after reconciling their friendship despite the heated campaign. Just as the news broadcaster begins to announce that a winner has finally been projected, the episode freezes on a shot of both men's faces, cutting to credits without ever revealing who won the election. The network had actually requested this cliffhanger ending, according to producer Bob Fraser, with plans to continue the series the following season. ABC canceled the show anyway, leaving millions of viewers permanently wondering whether Benson achieved his ultimate goal of becoming governor, or whether he lost to the man he had served for so many years. Guillaume essentially played the same beloved character across two different successful series spanning nearly a decade, and in both cases, he never got to give audiences a proper conclusion to the story. Fact 15. The plan, if renewed, was revealed.
Boy, by the time I find her in this place, she could be old enough to vote.
When Benson ended in 1986 with one of television's most frustrating cliffhangers, viewers were left wondering who actually won the gubernatorial election between Benson Dubois and Governor Gatling. The series finale showed both men sitting together watching the election returns on television, and just as the news anchor began to announce the winner, the show froze on a final frame of their faces, leaving the outcome completely unresolved. For decades, fans could only speculate about what might have happened next, but years later, one of the show's key producers finally revealed what the writers had actually planned for Benson's future if ABC had renewed the series for an 8th season. Producer Bob Fraser, who worked on Benson throughout its entire 7-season run, shared in a 2007 interview that the creative team had already mapped out where the story would go if the network picked up another season. According to Fraser, Governor Gatling would have won the election, keeping his position as governor despite running against his former butler and political protege. However, this wouldn't have been a defeat for Benson at all, because the plan was for him to be appointed as a United States Senator, continuing his remarkable climb up the political ladder that had been one of the show's central storylines from the very beginning. This revelation makes perfect sense when you consider Benson's journey throughout the series. He started as the head of household affairs at the governor's mansion, essentially running the domestic staff, then worked his way up to become the state budget director, and eventually was elevated to the position of lieutenant governor. Having him become a senator would have been the next logical step in his ascent through the political ranks, taking him from state politics to the national stage in Washington. The writers had clearly been building towards something even bigger than the governorship all along, showing that Benson's story was always meant to be about upward mobility and the possibility of achieving the American dream regardless of where you started in life.